Breaking news, CBS Sports HQ. According to from the NFL, where the Steelers' Diontae Johnson is the latest wide receiver to cash in. According to multiple reports, Johnson will get a 2-year contract extension worth $36 million, including $27 million guaranteed. The fourth-year wide receiver made his first Pro Bowl this past season when he led the Steelers with 107 catches for 1,161 yards and 8 touchdowns. We know that things have changed in Pittsburgh without Ben Roethlisberger there, but you see what Diontae Johnson has done in his career and where he's ranked in the AFC since 2019. Just one of the best pass catchers in terms of volume and maybe some better quality of targets potentially coming his direction in 2022. To break it down here on CBS Sports HQ on Fantasy Football Today, I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. That's Heath Cummings. So Diontae Johnson now going to be with Pittsburgh for the next 2 years. The hold-in is over. He joins DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel is getting paid since the start of training camp, and certainly a plethora of wide receivers who have gotten paid this offseason. Where does Diontae Johnson rank for you in terms of the Steelers as a pass catcher and then as a fantasy asset this year?
He's the number one receiver in Pittsburgh. He's going to be the guy that gets the most targets in that offense. It doesn't matter that Ben Roethlisberger's gone. I think the coaching staff knows that he's the best playmaker that they have, and they clearly wanted him back to give him about $18 million a year. All the good stuff about George Pickens and Calvin Austin that's been coming out in training camp, not enough to unseat him as the number one guy. As far as fantasy goes, I'm nervous. Mitchell Trubisky has not looked good in camp. Kenny Pickett has not looked good in camp. Mason Rudolph hasn't looked good in the NFL when he's had the chance to play. These are the guys that are going to be throwing in Diontae Johnson's direction. So he may still get decent target volume from game to game, but the quality of target, I think, could go down from where it was with Ben Roethlisberger last year. And it's not like they were tough throws that Roethlisberger was making to Diontae Johnson, but it could be a mess for him. I think it's going to be a downturn statistically for him. He's barely in my top 24 among wide receivers in full PPR. He's way out of it in non-PPR.
Very interesting that Trey Lance looked miserable in training camp, and then Deebo Samuel signed, and all of a sudden Trey Lance looked pretty good, and we saw that Geno Smith and Drew Lock were struggling until DK Metcalf stepped on the field, and now the reports are they're starting to look pretty good. Maybe it's the fact that Mitchell Trubisky was missing this guy, and Chase Claypool was dealing with the shoulder injury to turn things around in Steelers practice, that those guys hopefully get back on the field. But in terms of Diontae Johnson, for you, Heath, where do you think he finishes this season as a fantasy player?
A low-end number 2 wide receiver. I'm slightly more optimistic than Dave. And the thing is, he has been so vulgar. His yards per catch have not been good at all. He had 169 targets last year. A lot of that is because they threw the ball 653 times. I don't think there will be near as much pass volume. I do think George Pickens adds some significant competition for targets. But I still expect that Johnson's going to be an 8 to 9 target per game guy and finishes a low-end number 2.
I think the one thing with Trubisky you can kind of point to is when he had Allen Robinson in Chicago in the best year for Trubisky and one of the best years for Robinson in the 2019 campaign, 154 targets. Now, clearly there is more competition than what Robinson was dealing with in Chicago then, but still we could see a lot of volume heading in Diontae Johnson's direction. The one thing to keep in mind with Trubisky, whether it's him or Kenny Pickett, is those guys will run a lot more than Ben Roethlisberger did, who did not run at all. So maybe Diontae Johnson's targets come down, but more quality targets. I know you said that could be a problem, Dave, but it's not like Roethlisberger was lighting it up down the field, and maybe we see Diontae Johnson do a few different things in terms of his route tree. So we'll see where fantasy managers come out on Diontae Johnson, but we know that he's going to be playing in the 2022 campaign, not holding out anymore or holding in. He has agreed to a 2-year contract extension and should continue to be a member of the Steelers and a productive fantasy asset as well. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, now we'll get to Austin Ekeler here on Fantasy Football Today. Breaking news is behind us. Austin Ekeler is in front of us, and he's certainly in front of fantasy managers as one of the top running backs to target in the first round. Ekeler joins us.
All right, back here at Inside Training Camp live from Latrobe, Pennsylvania, with a guy that needs no introduction at all, Mike Tomlin, head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Appreciate a little bit of time, Coach. And going into your 16th season, second longest tenured head coach in the National Football League. And walking over here, I just saw the excitement. After 16 years, same position, same role. What gets you excited about coming to training camp every year?
I just think being a competitor, the challenge that each season holds, how the variables change, the evolution of roles, whether roles are expanding or diminishing. It's just so many things that change, even when you occupy the same role, that whet your appetite for the competition. It's August, man. Cut grass, football is that time of year.
Yeah, I heard you in the offseason doing an interview, and you were talking about how you're never going to be a coach that runs away from coaching. You always want to run to coaching. We talk a lot to players about what did you do to prepare for the season? What did you do to prepare for the season? What do you do as a coach after this many years to prepare for each and every season?
It's always a myriad of things. I have a standard checklist that's never changing. It's procedural things over a 12-month calendar, whether it's self-scouting, trends in the game in all three phases and things of that nature. But there are also things that kind of hit me in the forehead, things that may be more intangible related. This offseason, I've been focusing on expanding my social media knowledge and appreciation in an effort to connect with today's players. And so I'm a full-time Instagram participant now, and just dipping my toe in the water because, you know, as you mentioned, when you have a job for 16 years, I don't want to ever get comfortable. Right. I always want to be working to grow and stay connected, and that's just a component of today's player and today's game that I can't run away from.
Gotta say, I did not expect that to be a part of your answer. But there's certain guys that I just see and I say, this guy was made to be a coach. You're one of those guys. When was that moment where it just clicked to you to go, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life?
When the realities of my playing talent set in. You know, all right. You know, I'm a football lover, man. I've been on a football team every year of my life since 1980. And so it was a very natural thing for me, just in terms of an opportunity to remain a part of the game and be a part of a team. That's just something that I value. I've always valued and have been fortunate enough to experience a lot of growth because of that. And so that's probably has been my chief motivator in terms of being in this space for as long as I have.
Yeah, you guys are one of the teams. I always love coming here to Latrobe that goes away from home for training camp. I mean, it's down to like 6 teams now. I know after the pandemic, a lot of people just stayed at home. What is it about getting away with your team that you love so much and that it was important for you guys to come back here?
All you got to do is be at Rooney Hall with us 8:45, 9 o'clock tonight. When all the official work of the day is done and those guys are sitting on the stoop and the young guys are hearing the oral history from guys like Cam Hayward, where they're teaching them how to be pros, talking about how to manage their lives outside of ball in terms of being a professional athlete. There's so much to be gained from that informal time. It's the intangible quality that make up football teams. And so you provide them a space and time for that to happen. When you have camp at home, although the comforts and the amenities are there, at the end of the business day, they all get in their cars and they go their separate ways. To watch that snack time, to watch the things that happen when all the work is done over the course of the day, it really convinces you the value of St. Vincent in a destination camp.
Greatness is defined in this league by consistency. And nobody's been more consistent as a head coach than you have. No losing seasons in your 15 years in that position. What do you pinpoint? If there's one thing that you say, this is why we're so consistent, what do you pinpoint?
We don't make the simple complex. We focus on the now. We don't try to get too big picture. I think there's natural urgency when you maintain that collective focus. I think the players can get behind that. I don't stand in front of the group and talk about long-term development and the things that we're trying to build and do. No, we're trying to be a world championship caliber team each and every year. We're making decisions with that in mind, and we got all our chips in the middle of the table on 2022. And I think when you don't allow the big picture to cloud your judgment and make discussions gray, I think you position yourselves to remain competitive, and that's a desire that we have.
And it doesn't hurt to be consistent when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback that's running the show.
No question.
Now you're going to have to replace Big Ben. What's the biggest thing that you say this team has to replace that Big Ben brought to the table?
You know, I'm one that believes you have to work to play to your strengths and work to minimize your weakness, and that has always been a strength of ours. Now, it may or may not be a strength now, and so that's not a place we can hang our hat. And so, man, you just got to, whatever your makeup is, you got to work to minimize your strength, minimize your weaknesses, and play to your strengths. And so guys have acknowledged that may or may, that's in question. And so it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. But I think it brings the best out in all of us. I think guys like Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt understand the responsibility that comes with being them when we have less than a stable environment across the other side. And so that's how we've been talking. That's what we've been talking about. One thing I can assure you, we will not seek comfort or run away from the responsibility of being a Pittsburgh Steeler, and that is winning.
And very few teams go into training camp with a true QB competition. I mean, it sounds like you got 3 guys that are competing for that spot. What ultimately, as the head coach, becomes the determining factor on picking one of those 3 guys to lead this team?
You know, oftentimes we spend a lot of time talking about capabilities, the ceiling, if you will. Splash play capabilities, leadership, comeback ability, and things of that nature. I've really been focused on the floor. Routine things. I think a varsity level player or a starter in this league makes routine plays routinely. And so I want to see consistent flat accuracy. I want to see routine decisions being made in a timely manner. I want to see them maintain possession of the football. I want to see them do the informal things that come with the position. Make the young wideouts have that warm and fuzzy feeling. Encourage and nurture and develop a guy like George Pickens. And so I really think at the end of the day, it's not going to be the spectacular that makes the determining factor of who the guy is. It's going to be the mundane, routine things and to what level that it gets done on a consistent basis.
I always talk about it. It starts with making the layups, Yep. All right, this is something that's become a staple around training camps, this Guardian cap that I know they've got certain positions wearing these. I know you've been an advocate of having all of your guys wear this. Why such a proponent of this?
You know, I'm not a medical expert, man. I didn't go to medical school, and so I rely on those guys. And I sit on a committee or two, and it's always been speculative in the past regarding what this does for you. This past offseason, the medical experts were very definitive. They say if one person has it on, it mitigates the potential of concussions by 10%, and if both guys, 20%. And when they talk that definitively, and I didn't go to medical school, I get behind that, and I explain that to our guys. As a leader of the group, man, it's my job to safeguard them and to work to make their working environment as safe as I can make it. And so that's just a component of it.
What's been the early response?
Who cares?
So, one guy runs the show around here. Hey, I've always said that if there was one coach that I would love to play for, it would have been you. I know you got a quarterback competition going on. So if you need anybody else in the mix, just give me a holler. I think I got a few throws left.
Do not tease me.
I'm not going to put that on camera. But, man, the great Mike Tomlin, we appreciate a little bit of time. I always love catching up with you. Have a great season, as you always do.